Okay, the French and Indian War was a war that was between Great Britain and France. Both sides had Native American allies, and it took place both in North America and there was fighting also in Europe between Great Britain and France. The war, if you were studying it in Europe, would be called the 7 Year War because it only lasted 7 years in Europe. Fighting started 2 years earlier in North America. So from 1754 to 1763, it's a 9 year war. And keep in mind, it does take a while to come up with a peace treaty. War broke out between Great Britain and France. Both were superpowers of Europe at the time, and they were trying to prove who was more superior in colonial America. So if you look at this map really quickly, this is something we went over in class. The darker stripes are going to be the territory claimed by England, and right to the west of the darker stripes, where it says the Appalachian Mountains, and you can see the Ohio River and the Great Lakes, that's territory that is disputed between Great Britain and France. Both are claiming that they have rights to this land, um, and obviously this war is to settle once and for all who actually does. Keep in mind, of course, that there are Native Americans living on this land who have ties to neither the French or the British. So once again, the French and Indian War was a war fought between Great Britain and France. It was fought in both Europe and North America, and both Great Britain and France had different Native American tribes fighting alongside them, meaning they were allies with different Native American groups. Why was this war fought? Well, the war is fought over the Ohio Valley. If you can see the blue line there, that is the Ohio River. The Ohio River leads directly into the Mississippi River. If you are trying to send goods from Ohio, Illinois, Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, an easy way to do that is to send it down the Ohio River to the Mississippi River, and then it will reach the Gulf of Mexico. And you can ship it much more quickly rather than traveling over land. The other thing is the fur trade is in high demand. Europeans love American fur. They want beaver hats, they want deer skin. And so the fur trade is big money. And if you can control this area, there are tons of animals that they can go and kill and then sell their fur for. Also, this area is going to be very good farmland. So the French want it for farming, as do the English. And as mentioned before, this is part of a bigger battle of who is the most powerful country in the world. Remember, last year, when we were talking about the Middle Ages and the Hundred-Year War, France and Great Britain have been fighting on and off for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. This is just another example of how they were fighting to see who was the most powerful. Now, if you're a Native American, whose side do you fight alongside? If you choose to fight in the French and Indian War. Well, a lot of the Native Americans actually choose to fight alongside the French. The French, there are less French living in the New World than British, and so there are less French, so it's the lesser of the evils. The French who do live there oftentimes pay better. They pay more for land. They also pay fairly for fur that is traded between the Native Americans and the French. So the Native Americans like this relationship. It's a much more even give and take. The other thing is a lot of people that come over from France don't necessarily set up farms, but they do want to trap fur. And so many of them will be single men, come over unmarried, and they will marry within the Native American tribes. So for many of the Native Americans, this might be your brother-in-law that you decide to fight alongside. You want to make money off the fur trade, and there are just too many British who are causing too many problems. Now, if you're an English colonist, how do you feel about the war? Well, if you're living along the East Coast, say in Boston, you may not be heavily involved. Or if you're in Charleston, South Carolina, you may not really know much about what's going on or not care. But if you are a frontiersman, meaning living away from the larger cities, not living very close to the Atlantic Ocean, you are concerned because the Native Americans who are allied with the French may be attacking your small towns. They may be attacking your settlement, your cabin, your farm. And so this is directly concerning you. Plus, a lot of British colonists want to move west. They want to pass the Allegheny Mountains. They want to pass the Appalachian Mountains and set up homes and make a livelihood for themselves. So those people are directly involved. Now, if you're living on the East Coast or you're a merchant, you actually might be trading with the enemy. So if you're British, You may just be looking for whoever is willing to pay money for your goods. Who started the war? We're going to talk about George Washington in the next video, but I just want you to know that he is often credited with starting the entire war. At the age of 21, he is part of the colonial militia. He is sent by the Virginia governor to go tell the French, who are setting up a fort, Fort Duquesne, which is in present-day Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, telling them, you are trespassing, you are on British soil, you need to leave, because they consider that Virginia territory. So he is assigned that duty. When he gets there, he tells the French, you must leave. This is British land. And they say, we're not going to leave. This is French territory. Well, since he's just a messenger when he goes to obviously deliver this communication from the Virginia governor, he has to take that message back to the Virginia governor and say, they're not planning on leaving anytime soon. What do you want to do about it? So the French refuse to leave Fort Duquesne, which is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and George Washington has to go back and tell the Virginia governor they have no plans to leave. In the spring of 1754, George Washington is sent back for the second time towards Fort Duquesne to actually forcefully remove the French. He has 150 men, even though he still will be outnumbered with that. Before he can get to Fort Duquesne, he comes across a French scouting party. This is a smaller group of French soldiers. Within that group of the French soldiers, there's actually an important French diplomat, and they're just out scouting in the woods. So it's kind of George Washington just stumbles upon this group. Fighting ensues. The French diplomat, the important French person, is killed, and therefore George Washington is blamed for killing this important French official, even though it was one of the Native Americans that was fighting alongside, meaning allied with George Washington, who actually killed the French diplomat. Well, because of this battle, this small little battle between George Washington and the French scouting party, he has to retreat and quickly build Fort Necessity, because he built it out of necessity. Looking at the fort really quickly, it is a small fort. It was built hastily. It's actually built just at the bottom of a hill, so when it rains, the water's going to run down to it, so it's not incredibly sturdy. This is just another picture of the fort. I believe you can go visit today, but it's not the exact same. Obviously, they would have rebuilt it. This is exactly what I was telling you about, how George Washington attacks the French scouting party. So George Washington's men are responsible for killing 10 Frenchmen, and they capture 21 of them. They take those 21 Frenchmen back to Fort Necessity. Then more of the French troops actually come to Fort Necessity in order to seek revenge for George Washington's attack on the scouting party. This is not a long battle. It doesn't last long. He actually ends up having to surrender. He signs a document all in French that admits his guilt to killing this important French diplomat, but he's actually allowed to go free, which is surprising. So somebody who actually starts the war, kills an important French diplomat, because he signs a surrender, signs basically this piece of paper that allows him to surrender, allows him to go free. So first time that George Washington escapes. And we'll talk about the Albany Plan of Union later.